Next up, we got resolution and image size. All right, so we're going to spend most of our time in image size dialog box. I do just very, very quickly want to show you a couple of things here. We have a crop tool, which kind of pertains to image size, where you might be coming in here and actually cropping parts of the photo, and you just drag these little handles in and out, and that'll crop your photo. I can always just reset it back to the original. There's also a straighten tool here. The way the straighten tool works is you click on it, and then you click and drag along something that should be straight. All right, so if there's a crooked horizon line, which this one's not so crooked, but let's say it was crooked and I dragged it down here, then what's going to happen is, in fact, let's do this. Let me undo. I'll take the straighten tool and I'll drag it right along here. Let's say that was a horizon line. You see Photoshop is going to move so it straightens that. So those are, again, we're talking more image size and resolution, but these tools do kind of help affect image size in a way. So let's head back up here to our image menu, and we're going to come down here to image size. This is where we'll spend the rest of the lesson. There's two places where we would talk about image size and resolution, okay? First place, screen. If your image is destined for the computer screen, if you're working on an image for the web, if you're going to send it in an email to somebody, if you're going to post it to Facebook, if you do something like that, if your image is destined for the computer screen, then you want this over here to say pixels. And basically what this is showing you is that this image is 2,500 pixels wide and 1,668 pixels high, up and down. All right, so 2,500 pixels wide, 1,600 up and down. So if I were to count, you have pixel, it's on the computer screen, 2,500 of them going across. Now, that's probably too big to display on most computer screens. So what I would normally do is if I were going to put this up onto the web or send it an email to somebody, and you've probably done that before, somebody sends you an image that's too big, it takes over your email, you can't see it. So what I would do is I'd probably come over here and knock this down, 12 or 1,600, something like that. Click OK. Now I've just resized the image. Now it's smaller on the computer screen. I can, by the way, zoom in. You'll see that Photoshop right now is only zoomed in to 33%. So I could go to my zoom tool, click on it once, click on it again, 66.7, 100%. Now I'm in at 100%. All right. Now, remember, if you hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt key on PC, it goes to the little minus sign, and that'll zoom me back out, which, by the way, guys, I never, ever do it that way. I always just hit Command plus on the Mac, Command minus on the Mac to zoom out, or Control plus or minus on a PC, and that'll zoom you in or out. All right. If you ever zoomed in like this, and I know we're talking keyboard shortcuts, but I think it does pertain to resolution and image size, especially if you're working with bigger images. If you're ever zoomed way in and you want to move around the image, if you hold down the spacebar key, no matter what tool you have, even if I have the move tool or even the brush tool, if I hold down the spacebar key, it goes to the little grabber hand. Now I can move around and kind of pan around my image here. If I ever do have, this is kind of a neat little trick. If I ever do have the zoom tool, the magnifying glass, if I click and drag to the right, it zooms in. If I click and drag to the left, it zooms out. So zoom in, zoom out. And finally, if you ever just double click on the little grabber hand, it automatically zooms it into whatever will fit your screen. So you don't have to figure out what fits your screen. It'll zoom it in. See, it says 96.9% because that's what fits in my screen. Okay. Back to our story. So before, we had just resized this image. We made it a little bit smaller, all right? Pixel dimensions went from 2,500 pixels to 1,200 pixels. I'm actually going to undo. Let's undo. Let's get this back to a bigger image, and I'll double click the little hand and fit into screen here. So we'll head back into our image size dialog. So we have 25 by 16. So if you want to resize, you can always go down. Here's the thing. You're not really supposed to go up. All right. That's kind of like the general rule when it comes to your images, because what happens is let's say I want to take this to 5,000. What happens is once I start to go up, Photoshop has to guess. It started off, remember, I'm going to hold down the Option key on Mac, Alt on PC, and this works in more dialogues than just this one. See the little reset button? It'll reset it to its defaults. This started out as 2,500 pixels wide. If I try to make it 5,000, Photoshop has to guess and insert another 2,500 pixels. So the best it can do is guess. What you're going to get is just a slightly soft image. It's not going to warp it. It's not going to distort it. It's just not going to look quite as sharp. All right, so something to keep in mind for you. So you generally can't go up, but you can very easily go down, and you're not going to lose image quality. Best thing you can do also is at the bottom, the little menu here, is figure out what you're going to do. If you're going to enlarge, then probably choose one of the enlargement ones. It used to just say bicubic smoother, and you had to figure out what that was for. At least now they put enlargement, reduction, smooth gradients, hard edges, things like that. All right. Now, that's if your image was destined for the screen. If your image is now destined for print, things change a little bit, because what we want to do is we don't care as much about pixels. We care more about inches, because that's the physical document, right? Let's head back in here. Sorry about that. That's the physical document size, inches. All right. We don't print to paper that is 1,200 pixels by 800 pixels. We print to paper that is 11 by 17 inches or 8 inches by 10 inches. That's what we print to. So we switch this over to image. Notice it still shows you your document dimensions in pixels up here. So let's think about this. All right. We're going to cancel out of here. I'm going to create a new image, and I want to show you an example. I'm going to create a new image that's 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. And the resolution, I'm going to make it 240, which is generally what you want if you're printing your photos. Right around 240. Give or take a little bit. It's not going to hurt either way. Right around 240. So I click. I get this document. Well, let's head over into the image size dialog box, and I'll switch this over to inches. So what's this telling me? It's saying that I can print this document at 4.1 inches each way. So let's say I want to change that. Let's say I want to make this document, I don't know, let's say I want to make it 10 inches. What changed here? Did you see this? Here, let me back up a second. 1,000 by 1,000 pixels. I'm going to change it to 10 inches from 4 to 10. What just changed? Now, 2,400 by 2,400 pixels. What just happened? Photoshop said, if you want to take this document from 4 inches to 10 inches, I need to change the dimensions to 2,400 from 1,000. What is that? That's increasing the size. Typically bad. Not going to give you as sharp of a print as you could get, because you're making the image bigger. And if you're ever curious of how this is all figured out, take a look. 10 inches, the resolution is 240 pixels per inch, PPI. Okay, not DPI. Don't get it confused with DPI. Pixels per inch. 10 inches times 240, what's that equal? 2,400. If I change this to 1, what's it equal? 240. 1 times 240, 1 pixel per inch. I only want 1 inch, 240 pixels per inch, 240 pixels. Okay? But let's change it back to 10. By the way, see that little lock icon? It means that when it's clicked, when I change one, you see it changes the other one. If you turn that off, when I change one, it won't change the other. Okay? It just means they're linked together. But anyway, back here to 10. So we just increase the size of our document. Not really what we want to do here. So what would you do instead? What I would do instead is turn off resample. Okay? Because now, when I change this to 10, check out what happens. It now changed my resolution. It's saying, if you want to print 10 inches by 10 inches, and you're not going to let me change the pixel dimensions, which is what resample means, all right? I can only give you 100 pixels per inch. 10 times 100 equals 1,000. All it's going to do as you change the document size in the inches here is change the resolution to meet 1,000. If I change this to 15, 66. If I change it to 5, 200. See? 5 times 200 equals 1,000. All right. So by turning resample off, you're taking the top portion out of the equation. You're saying, I don't want you to change the pixel size of this image. I want to keep every pixel that I possibly can here. So what it's telling you is that if you want that, if you want this at 10 inches, the best it'll give you is 100 pixels per inch. Okay. So let's head back over here to our image. Real world situation. Image size. All right. I want to print this. So what am I going to do? I want to print this. I'm going to change it to inches. I want to print it as an 11 by 17. So I'll change width, right, to 17 inches. Height is 11. What happened? It increased my dimensions. Okay, so we don't want to do that. Let me reset. Option or Alt click, resets. I'm going to turn off resample because I'm saying I don't want you to enlarge the image. I don't want the image enlarged. I want it to be, I want it to be sharp. I don't want you to add pixels to it. So I turn resample off. Now I change this to 17. See what happened? It changed my resolution to 147. It's saying that 17 times 147 equals 2500. It's saying if you want an 11 by 17, the best I'll give you for pixels per inch, pixels per printed inch, the best I'll give you is 147. All right. So all that said, what's the magic number here? Okay, because we're talking about printing. So the best thing that you can do is if you're printing yourself, do a couple of test prints. There's so many different factors that rely on the numbers that we choose here. We hear 240 to 300. We hear that as kind of the number that we're shooting for. Everybody says, oh, you got to print at 300 PPI or 240 PPI. It's kind of the number we're shooting at. Will 147 give you a good image? It might. It actually really might. I've seen a lot of prints done at 150, 125 PPI, and they look just fine. A lot of it depends on viewing distance. If it's going to be on a wall where people are going to walk by that wall all the time and put their noses up into the photo, then maybe not so good because they might see some of that image quality loss in there, which, by the way, photographers are the only ones that put their noses up to the photo. The rest of the world usually stands a few feet away. So a lot of it's viewing distance. If it's like a billboard, nobody's close. You're never going to see that. What they do, and try this sometime. Walk through a department store and look close at some of the posters and some of the large images that they have hanging there. You'd be amazed at the noise and what you might not consider to be a sharp image. You'd be amazed at what some of those images look like when you look at them up close. When you look at them far away, they look just fine. Okay, so just really quick to recap here. If the image is destined for screen, leave this to pixels. This is the exact size of your image. Okay, what you see is what you get. If I change it to 1200, click OK. Now it's 1200 pixels across. Okay, now if the image is destined for print, you want to switch this to inches. All right, and then you want to go in here and modify the width and the height. If you modify the width and the height and the dimensions go up, you need to turn resample on, and you need to take that out of the equation and say, all right, I want to print an 11 by 17. Let me go ahead and punch in those numbers so that my document size is 11 by 17 and take the resolution that it gives you. If that's not going to be good enough, you have two choices: print smaller or decide that you are going to increase the dimensions, the pixels of the image, and take what you can get from it. Hope that the image is still good enough quality to support whatever size you're trying to print with.